And we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Today we're talking about something that isn't technically a game. It's PlayStation Plus, because on June 13th, Sony launched this new and improved version of PlayStation Plus. This is the thing that a lot of people are calling their answer to Xbox Game Pass, kind of. It's replacing the single subscription that used to make up PlayStation Plus. Now the service is like split into a 3-tiered system, with each additional tier adding more content and different stuff. The whole thing is a little confusing right out of the gate, so we're going to try to explain how it works as simply as we can, and then we'll get into some pros and cons. Bear with us, just explaining it's going to take a minute. So, you know Game Pass, right? All in all, pretty good value, but if you don't have a PC or an Xbox, you miss out. So people have really been clamoring for this. Now we have Sony and PlayStation's equivalent. Essentially, they're upgrading their current PlayStation Plus service to make it more Game Pass-like and more valuable. For the past few years, PlayStation Plus would put out a monthly selection of games that you could download for free that would rotate along with a selection of first-party PS4 games that you could download anytime. Now, of course, it was also required for online multiplayer, too. That version of PS Plus will remain the same. It's now just called PlayStation Plus Essential, and it offers all the stuff you got from Plus memberships, like PS4 and PS5 monthly games, online multiplayer access, some exclusive discounts, and cloud storage. That's the first tier of this new PS Plus subscription, which costs the same as it does now. In the United States, it's $10 a month or $60 for 12 months. The second tier is where the new stuff comes in. This is the PlayStation Plus Extra, and it gets you access to a bigger, more robust catalog of PS4 and PS5 games. This costs in the United States $15 a month or $100 for 12 months. Now, the third tier is maybe the most interesting. It's called PlayStation Plus Premium and gets you access to everything in the previous tiers, along with a selection of PS1, PS2, PSP, and PS3 titles. And if your market has cloud streaming, then you can access certain games using cloud streaming as well. So basically, this tier combines PlayStation Plus with Sony's PlayStation Now streaming service with some extra additions, and it costs in the United States $18 a month or $120 for 12 months. So are any of these new tiers worth the price of admission? Well, how does it actually compare to other stuff? It mostly depends specifically on what you're looking for. Extra is a subscription most people are probably interested in, and while the selection of first-party titles is pretty good, the third-party part of the catalog is a little bit more spotty. There's definitely a lot of games here, I think like well over 200, but how much value all these games actually add is basically up to you. I mean, there's some really great stuff here. We love PlayStation games, like stuff that you can't get elsewhere. It's great to have free access, technically, to new PlayStation exclusives like Demon's Souls Remake or Spider-Man Returnal, but there are some odd omissions. So Uncharted 4 is there, but just the PS4 version, not the Legacy of Thieves remaster. The only way to play the Legacy of Thieves version is to get the premium sub, which just has a trial version. Marvel's Spider-Man is the PS4 version, not the updated PS5 version. Horizon Zero Dawn is here, but not Forbidden West. You just get access to a premium demo. Most of the major Sony games on the PS4 are here otherwise, so if you're a PlayStation fan and you don't already have some of this stuff, then it's a decent value. But just know that at least at launch, the library isn't technically the deepest, but the third-party section is where it's hit or miss. Most of what you're getting are either Ubisoft games or games that have been, around and on discounts or offered for free for a while now in some way, shape, or form. Batman Arkham Knight, Control Ultimate Edition, no slight, but, nothing crazy. But there are a few notable third-party games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Guardians of the Galaxy, which if you're getting access to that for the first time, you should play it. It's really good. But if you're getting PlayStation Plus Extra, then you're really getting it for those first-party games. The selection is definitely bigger than we assumed, though, and there's a lot of good stuff here if you're willing to, sort through it all. Now, Sony has explicitly said that most first-party games will not appear on this service day one, like on launch, but that doesn't mean that they're still not getting a few exclusive day one games. I mean, Stray, the cat game, is going to be a day one release, but only for premium subscribers. So let's move on to that. The most expensive tier, Premium, is the biggest wild card, really. For this stuff, they're going all in on streaming and classic games, which, depending on who you are as a customer, is either a huge turnoff or something that sounds interesting to you. We're pretty skeptical of game streaming here, but the experience so far has been decent. The games are playable, at least, We noticed some minor stuttering, and the screen sometimes looks like it's been smeared in Vaseline, which is kind of the PS3 experience anyway, if you think about it. But, at least for us, this is a decent way to go back and play some great PS3 games, as long as your internet connection is fast enough. Might not be the greatest for every single type of game, but it's there. Now, having some access to some of the PS3 catalog is a nice move, but we'd so much rather have them just ported over and be downloadable. I'd much rather have the option to download these games locally than be forced to just stream them. Right now, this is the only option, and it's not new. Like, if you've been using PlayStation Now, you've probably dived in at least once to stream and play something like Metal Gear Solid 4. I do that, except now Metal Gear Solid 4 isn't available, which sucks. Just again, depending on your internet connection, be prepared for some variation. With all game streaming stuff, your mileage is gonna vary. And like with the regular catalog, there's some good stuff here and some weird omissions. Having all the Infamous games is great, but like with the Ratchet and Clank games, they're missing Tools of Destruction, the first one released on PS3. And there's Resistance 3, but no Resistance 1 and 2. And again, the Metal Gear Solid 4 thing really stings because it was technically the only place. It's just trapped on PS3. I understand it's all licensing stuff, but still. The selection of exclusives is somewhat thin, along with some pretty random third-party games like Lords of Shadow 2 and Retro City Rampage, a game that's like 100 megabytes and also on PS4, but you can only stream it with the PlayStation Plus collection for some reason. So if you're curious about multiplayer, then we've got some good news and bad news. PS3 Online Multiplayer does work. For some of the games, at least, we managed to join with another player in God of War Ascension, but in Motorstorm Apocalypse, an underrated gem, we would just get an error message. Now, along with those PS3 games, premium members also get a pretty random collection of PS1, PS2, and PSP games, some of which are remasters that they previously released on PS4, like the Jack games and Dark Cloud 1 and 2, while others aren't. The non-remastered games aren't quite anything to get too excited about. They have a few quality of life additions, like a rewind function and the ability to make save states, but that's really somewhat it. Like, they're basic, but it's fine. Wasn't asking for much, but we like changing the resolution and aspect ratio and stuff on some familiar games. And on the positive side, at least the PS1 games actually run at their intended frame rate. If you care enough, the 50 hertz, 60 hertz thing, that has been fixed for the North American release. These are the NTSC versions of the games and run at the speed they're supposed to. So while the selection isn't huge, at least all the new games aren't compromised in any way. The selection is pretty small too. Only a few games like Ape Escape and Siphon Filter really stand out. Intelligent Cube is also a classic. Original Wild Arms and Resident Evil Director's Cut. We always love to see that get some love. You should play it. Do your homework. Now, you can earn trophies in some of these games. The PS3 streaming games have PS4, PS5 stuff you can earn, but the new PS1 games, like the ones that were ported over from the PlayStation Mini, seemingly, only some of them have achievements, but not all of them. Games like Siphon Filter have achievements, and other games like Worms Armageddon do not. It's just another example of how kind of mixed this whole thing is. And to round things out, there are some remastered games in the premium catalog, which really should have just been in the extra catalog, like BioShock Remastered, Borderlands The Handsome Collection. This stuff came out on the PS4. It should be in the PS4 collection with everything else. It just feels odd attaching this stuff to premium subs. It just kind of feels like they were kind of grasping to make the premium library more appealing. Some of the stuff barely counts as a remaster too, like Strider, which was a PS4 game that was just a new game in the series. It's not technically a remake. Hopefully these categories fill out and improve in the future, because Sony has an amazing back catalog of games. The properties that they are sitting on are incredible. But instead of leveraging that to bolster this new PS Plus, it feels like they're kind of just repackaging all of the random stuff that they've done over the last few years. They're giving us PS4 versions of PlayStation games, PS Classic versions, PS3 remasters that already came out, PS3 games that are from their PS Now streaming service, and there's really no rhyme or reason to a lot of it. It's just them throwing out what they have, and it really is going to depend on the user. You might be happy with it. We were just hoping for a little bit more of an overhaul and less of a repackaging, but there is still value. Don't get us wrong. If you're just trying to spend a little money and get a bunch of games, you get that here. The PS4, PS5 games you get with PS Plus Extra make a lot more sense, and the list of games is relatively solid. The actual possible problem is simple, and it's not technically a bad problem. Some of you might already have most of these games already, so Extra isn't really giving us too much, but if you're less of a PlayStation diehard, then there is a decent selection of games to play here as long as you're mostly interested in the first party stuff. So after all that, despite our complaints, do we recommend PS Plus? Yes, sure. $15 for access to some PlayStation 4 and 5 first-party games is a pretty good deal if you want to try and knock some of these games out. I still think it needs a lot more if it wants to be competitive with other services on like PC or out on Xbox, but it's decent. And if there are games you want to play but don't want to actually buy, then there's nothing really wrong with it. There is value, like I said. Recommending premium specifically is a bit harder though, because it just needs more. If they had taken the time to actually port over a few PS3 games, then I'd think differently, but as it is, premium is just not perfect. I expect it to improve in the future, and Sony has said so. But right now, I see myself only just kind of subbing to this when I want to play something weirdly specific, and then letting it lapse or downgrade. You know, the whole thing is just a very confusing pile of stuff that can be individually appealing, but as a package, mostly ends up feeling not quite as good as it could be yet. So like I said, it's mixed, the answer is complicated. The collection of games you get from the extra subscription is solid and probably worth the upgrade. But with premium, you should look at the library really and decide if there's enough that you're interested in playing. It's missing a lot of classic PS1 and PS2 games, but what is there isn't bad. And while the PS3 library is a lot more robust, the only way you actually play those games is through streaming, which can be very hit or miss depending on where you are and the strength of your connection. It's a bit more complicated than it needs to be, but that doesn't mean the whole thing is a write-off. You know, depending on who you are, there's some pretty good value to be found here. And if PlayStation is all you're on, you know, no PC, no Switch, just Sony, there is enough to excite you, I think. Maybe, probably, in the coming years and months, it'll get better. But for a couple of bucks, you can play a bunch more games, and we can never really totally argue against that if you're looking for bang for your buck. But that's it before you buy. You know how this works by now. I give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion. So now we want to hear yours down in the comments. This is from two of us, myself and Eric behind the scenes here at gameranx, checking this out. But every consumer, every subscriber, every PlayStation player is completely different. So we want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Specifically how you feel about the libraries, which tier you're going to subscribe to, whether or not you think it's worth it, anything at all, let us know. If you enjoyed this video though, and maybe our opinions helped you out a little bit, clicking a like button's all you got to do because it legitimately helps us. So thank you. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.